this morning my love story. Not as cool as Taylor Swift's, but mine, so I will share it with you. So it started with a boy named Michael Bartlett. He was king of the pears, the blondest of blondes, the smartest boy in 5th grade, and I knew that we were meant to be together. How did I know? Well, because we were both born in June. And what more strongly assures a solid relationship and unending future than sharing the same birth month, clearly. Clearly, we were going to get married someday. Now, of course, I had never talked to Michael Bartlett before, because that's ridiculous. That would violate all the basic rules of childhood guy-girl relations. Boys have cooties. You like them from afar, but God forbid you ever talk to one of them. However, things were looking up for our relationship, because my friend was having a birthday party. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Because my friend was having a birthday party and she had invited boys. Oh yes, for a whole 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon, I was going to be hanging out coolly with Michael Bartlett, and I would no doubt woo him with all of my saucy glances and clever 1st grade wit. I had some classics up my sleeve, like why did the chicken cross the road? You know, classic stuff. So the day of the party came, and it primarily consisted of swimming in my friend's pool. First blow to our potential relationship. You see, I'm not a very strong swimmer, and due to many years of problems with my inner ears, I had to wear this very unflattering swim cap and earplugs to keep water out of my ears. Not the kind of like come hither gear I was hoping for. Michael Bartlett paid me no attention. I mostly ended up like sulking at one end of the pool, wishing that I didn't look ridiculous and that Michael Bartlett couldn't see my horrible swim cap, but he could. Finally, the swimming portion ended and it came to eat. I was like, yes, now it is my chance to strike. I will take off the swim cap. I carefully positioned myself across the picnic table from Michael Bartlett, planning to slip in my chicken crossing the road joke. He would then forget all about my swim cap and fall desperately in love with me. It was an excellent and foolproof plan. So we're sitting there. I was about to casually gain his attention when my friend's mom offered me a hot dog. Well, yes, of course, I will take a hot dog. And then she offered me mustard. Now, I'm not like this huge fan of mustard, but I'm not vehemently against it. So I thought, what the heck, yeah, I'll take mustard. And then all of a sudden, the world started to go a little funny. Mustard sounded horrible. In fact, a hot dog sounded horrible. Actually, I felt like I was going to puke. Michael Bartlett's face suddenly turned towards me, and it began to swim horribly like this terrible Picasso painting. And then the edges of my vision went black, and then my eyes rolled in the back of my head, and bang, I promptly fell and fainted off the picnic bench. It was pretty embarrassing. So that was the nail in the coffin to any future Michael Bartlett and I might have had. While swimming might seem romantic in like this Jane Austen-y Romeo and Juliet kind of way, I promise you, it is not romantic to a 1st grader, and your eyes roll back in your head and you fall off the picnic bench like a crazy person. No relationship survives that. And Michael Bartlett, unfortunately, got a very up-close and personal look at my eyes rolling into the back of my head and falling off the picnic bench, and we never ever talked again. So thusly ended my great love story and romance. And it's because of this that I am now married to Ryan instead of Michael Bartlett. And Ryan's born in March, so yeah, clearly that's going well. But after that party, I had this horrible, now what moment. I ruined every chance I could have had to find love with my only one true love, Michael Bartlett. So now what was I supposed to do? Was I doomed to a life without love forever? Did I have to wait until I was, I don't know, like an adult or something to find someone else who was born in June, who had never seen me in a swim cap or never seen my eyes roll into the back of my head? Was I simply supposed to live forlornly, waiting and hoping one day that I could have a chance at love again? Was the rest of my life going to be a big now what moment? Now, maybe you've never fainted in your front of your one true love before and ruined all prospects of a love-filled future together. But I'm sure that each and every one of us here has had a now what moment in the pursuit of love. The relationship that you thought was going to be the one ended. The person that you pursued for months and months didn't like you back. The girl you liked moved away. The boy you loved found someone else. The love ended, and you were left wondering, now what? This series, we're exploring now what's. The spaces in between here and there, the time between now and someday. And one of the biggest now what's that we often face is in this area of love. We feel like we're just waiting and waiting for that someday, when we find that person, when we experience that love, when we finally get to have our happily ever after Juliet and Romeo moments. But is this all that life is about, just waiting? Is love something that's unavailable to us until someday? Is following Jesus and living out a life with him about more than just killing time? Tyler talked last week about the biggest now what, the now what of our walk with Christ. What do we do now that we've chosen to follow Jesus? Is our salvation just to wait to reunite with him in heaven? Or is it bigger than that? Just like with love, is our walk with Jesus just supposed to be about waiting for someday, about getting by until heaven? No, it's not. This land in between here and there, now and someday, is important and meaningful and is about so much more than just waiting for heaven or waiting for love. And Jesus has a lot to say on this now what of love, a lot to say about what love looks like in the in-between, about what love looks like in a life following him, here, now, in this moment, not just someday. And love is the primary thing that we're going to do in the in-between. Now what? Now we love deeply. So our culture likes to teach us that romantic love is the only context for real love. When we were brainstorming different songs to open this service with, there were a million different cheesy options about romantic love, and that just happened to be the one we chose. Songs about the love between a guy and a girl, these two people who are so goo-goo gaga for each other, they can't see anything else in the world. And that's great, you know, that kind of love is important. It's the love you see in a marriage or committed exclusive relationships. But that's not the only kind of love that there is. That's not the only place that love can exist. Those aren't the only two people that can give and experience love. But that's what our culture wants you to believe. It holds love hostage and limits and binds it and repackages it as this Valentine's Day stuffed teddy bear, roses and candles thing that has nothing to do with real love. And this is why we can have such a big now what moment when a romantic relationship ends or doesn't pan out, because we believe the world's definition of love. We believe that once that romantic relationship ends, now we can't participate in love. We believe our chance at giving and receiving love is gone, and no wonder this is heartbreaking for people. We are made for love because we are creatures made in God's image, and God himself is love. It is no wonder that we crave and long for and desire to love, because that is how God has created us. This desire for love is normal and healthy and good because it is a desire for the nature of God himself. But unfortunately, many of us are defining love by the world's standards, limiting love to one single context and one single expression, which is not at all how Jesus defines love. And yes, if we define love by the world's standards and hold it hostage to a romantic relationship, squeezing it into this one way of working, then yes, we're missing out on love. But thankfully, this is not at all what the Bible teaches about love, and not at all what Jesus invites us into when we choose to follow him. Because following him and entering the now what between here and eternity is all about love. It is something that we are invited to participate in the moment we begin following him, not someday. It is, in fact, the thing that we are commanded to participate in. Isn't that cool? We are commanded to participate in love, not sit around and wait for it someday. Jesus doesn't want you to sit around and wait for getting married, for the someday of finding the one. Jesus commands you to love right here, right now. And honestly, it is one of the only things that matters to him that you do. Do you feel like you're waiting for love? Do you feel like you're stuck in this now what? You don't have to be. This now what is all about love right here and right now. but you'll have to let go of what the world has taught you about love and instead embrace what Jesus tells you about love, because it is so much bigger than just a guy and a girl, than true love or the one. So when Jesus walked the earth, he interacted with a whole bunch of people who wanted to limit love, who wanted to squash it and hold it ransom and parcel it out in these tiny little insect portions. You don't deserve love, but I guess you can have a little bit. Love is something that the enemy always wants to limit and control, because if God is love, the more you limit love, the more you're trying to squeeze God out of the world. Different cultures have different ways of trying to hijack and limit and control love. And our culture right now does this a lot by limiting it to a romantic context. Unless you are in a romantic relationship with your status change on Facebook, you can't experience love. Romance has the exclusive on love. But in Jesus' time, it was a little bit different. Marital relationships were arranged. People didn't pretend that love was why you were in a relationship with someone else. It was a relationship of necessity or economy or protection, but not very often love. So love was hijacked in a different way by the cultural and religious elite of Israel, people called the Pharisees and Sadducees. So these people, the Pharisees and Sadducees, they had a lot of power in ancient Israel when Jesus lived. Religious elders and teachers held the highest esteem in that society. Everyone looked up to them. Everyone wanted to model them. They kind of like set the cultural rules of that time. So they set the rules on love. And instead of trying to limit love only to married people, like our culture does today, they tried to limit love to only rule-following people. The more closely you followed the rules, the more you would be accepted and shown love. But the more you disobeyed the rules, or the less perfect you were shunned, and love was pulled from you. Our culture limits love to your relational status. The culture Jesus lived during limited love to your goodness status. But both of these ways limit and hijack love, and Jesus is not okay with it. So we're going to take a look at a conversation in Matthew 22. So the religious elite tried to get Jesus to agree with how they were limiting love. They asked him what the most important rule to follow was. What is the supreme way that you can be good enough to earn love? But they weren't expecting his answer. This is what we read. One of the Pharisees, an expert in religious law, tried to trap Jesus with this question. Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. This is not what the Pharisees were expecting. Jesus doesn't say anything about tithing, about fastidiously observing hand-washing rules, about carefully avoiding contact with any dead body or dead animal. These were the things the Pharisees were good at and that they thought were important. No. Instead, he says that the most important rules to follow are rules of love. Love God and love others. This entirely subverts the Pharisees' expectations. These aren't legalistic rules where you can cross your T's and dot your I's and say, oh yeah, I definitely did that better than you. These are heart rules that you can't see on the outside. Every action Jesus takes on earth is governed first and foremost by love. Love for God and love for people. Over and over, he overturns the way that culture limited and hijacked love. A culture that said you could only be loved if you followed the rules, if you were perfect. Jesus demonstrates true love in how he lives, breaking down these cultural expectations of love. Let's look at another passage in Mark 3, where Jesus again breaks down this limiting of love that his culture was trying to do at the time. So one of the commandments in the Bible is to honor the Sabbath day. It's a day set aside for rest and for God, and this is a very important commandment in the Bible. It's one of the 10 Commandments. This command is important, but the Pharisees and Sadducees had turned it and twisted it into a way to follow rules. They prided themselves on how carefully they avoided working, limiting like the number of steps they took or how heavy of an object they could lift. Like they were putting serious legalistic rules on top of this. They did this so that they could completely avoid any semblance of work, so that they could be considered the most righteous, the most important, the most worthy of love. and they shunned and withheld love from anyone who didn't follow the rules as closely as they did. But here's what Jesus does. This is Mark 3, 1 through 5. Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath, breaking the rules. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned to his critics and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save life or destroy it?" But they wouldn't answer him. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. And then he said to the man, "Hold out your hand." So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. Jesus doesn't care about following legalistic rules. He cares about the heart. Jesus shatters the limits on love the religious leaders had made. He says that love is not limited by rules, by being perfect, by living up to some impossible standard. Love is simple and clear and right in front of you, and it is bigger than any limit you're trying to put on it. Jesus goes on to tell them, "What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest incomes from your herb gardens, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the most important things. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first wash the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will become clean too. But sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites. For you are like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but filled on the inside with dead people's bones and all sorts of impurity. Outwardly, you look like righteous people, but inwardly your hearts are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness." They missed the point. They thought that they were following God, but they were really just living to their own cultural standards, failing to embrace real love, failing to actually get what it means to follow Jesus. And when we live like you can only give and receive love if you're in a relationship, or if you get married, or if you find the one, we miss the point too. The Pharisees were so consumed with perfecting how they defined love, following the rules, looking perfect, that they missed life with Jesus. They missed what following God was all about. And when we are so consumed with attaining how our culture defines love, getting into a relationship, having a wedding, meeting our soulmate, then we miss out on life with Jesus. We miss out on what following God is all about. Jesus didn't say the greatest commandments were love God and love your soulmate. It was love God and love others, plural, unlimited, undefined. When we wait to love until we get married or find a relationship, we are missing the point. We are just like the Pharisees, limiting love and hijacking it. We're missing the point. This now what between accepting Jesus and going to heaven someday is meant to be marked by loving deeply, just like Jesus did. That's the point, Jesus says. Love God and love others. Not in the limited, myopic way of your culture, but my way, the way that includes everyone, unlimited, fully open. This is the point of the land between here and there, now in some way, to love deeply, Jesus' way. 1 John 4 tells us, "So we will not be afraid on the day of judgment, but we can face him with confidence because we live like Jesus here in this world." We are not called to live like our culture here in this world. We are called to live like Jesus here in this world, and he did not limit love. He shattered cultures, hijacking and limiting views of who could give and receive love. And as followers of Christ, we are to live like him, not bound by limited cultural expectations of love, but redefined by Jesus' definition of love. The religious leaders at the time said it was following the rules to the letter that earned you love. Our culture says it's about having a Pinterest wedding or finding the one. But Jesus said that love is so much bigger than this. Galatians 5:6 tells us, for when we place our faith in Christ Jesus, what is important is faith expressing itself in love. Once we place our faith in Jesus, once we begin the journey of following him, the rules and regulations, the boyfriend-girlfriend relational statuses aren't what matters. What matters is your faith in him expressed through love, unlimited, undefined, right now, not someday. So why is our love so important in this world? So important in this land between here and someday? Why does Jesus care so much about not limiting love, about breaking down the way our culture ransoms love and makes it tiny? Last week, Tyler introduced the idea of the land of exile. It's what we call this land between here and when we finally get to go home to Jesus. And he explained how it is our job to live in this land of exile and work for the good of the city we are placed in. And when we limit love, that means we limit the good we express in the world. Satan is so pleased when we believe that we can only love a romantic partner, because that means that every other relationship with a human being in our life is less and looks a little bit less like Jesus. We must love others deeply because it is essential for the life of the world that we live in. How? Our love preaches the gospel. How we love others is the loudest gospel message we will preach in our lives. Nothing else so clearly points to who Jesus is and to who God is than love, because God is love. And if we fail to love, we fail to show God to the world. 1 John 4 says, if someone says, I love God, but hates a fellow believer, that person is a liar. For if we don't love the people we can see, how can we love God whom we cannot see? And he has given us this command, those who love God must also love their fellow believers. Do you claim to love God? Do you claim to be a Christian? Well, the question is then, do you love others? Because the Bible is telling us here that if we are not loving others, we can't truly love God. If we are inviting people into a life following Jesus, they will not hear your words. They will feel or not feel your love, and that will tell them if God is real. 1 Corinthians 13 says, if I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but I didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it. But if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. Are you caught merely trying to say the gospel, to preach God with your lips, but not with your hands? Does your life merely look religious, but is not defined by living deeply? Jesus says that none of this other stuff matters, because it is only love that will truly point to him. 1 John 2 says, dear friends, I am not writing a new commandment for you. Rather, it is an old one you have had from the very beginning. This old commandment to love one another is the same message you heard before, yet it is also new. Jesus lived the truth of this commandment, and you also are living it. For the darkness is disappearing and the true light is already shining. Jesus lived the truth of loving others because he is love. And now we too are called to live like Jesus, to love others deeply. And when we do, it pushes back the darkness and points to God, showing the world that he is real and that he loves you. So how we love deeply is the loudest gospel message we will ever preach to anyone else. Why is loving deeply so essential to the life of the world we live in? Not only for the salvation of others, but also because love changes the world. How we love others is one of the greatest legacies of change we can leave. If God is love, then expressing love is the work of God in the world, and God transforms and renews and remakes and grows. I think about my husband Ryan's mom, Patty. Her life has been marked by loving deeply, by pouring love into others, and it is profound the impact her love has on other people. When we were at a family reunion this summer with Ryan's side of the family, some distant cousins of Ryan's talked to us at length about the huge impact Patty had had on them from just meeting her once. They'd been struggling with trying to conceive a child, and Patty's sincere, genuine, deep love for them had left an impression on them far greater than the amount of time they had spent together or the closeness of their relationship. Her love changed them and left a ripple. And now, Patty is dying of cancer. She will be ending her now what journey of the land in between, and she is finally going home to Jesus. But as these months come to a close, the weight and impact of her life of loving deeply is being felt. The number of people who have voiced the love and care they felt from her during Wraith meetings, the number of people who appreciate how she listened to them and was just there with them when they were going through something hard, the number of people who are saying, "Thank you for loving me," is overwhelming. And I am personally overwhelmed by the great gift that she unknowingly gave me, by how she loved her son, my husband, so deeply. He is marked and changed by her deep love. And he is the man he is today with a gentle heart and a loving spirit because Patty loved him deeply. And that legacy of love will live on in our son, Roland, even though he will never remember his grandmother, Patty. Love changes lives. Love is meaningful and impactful because love is God becoming tangible in the world. And love like that leaves ripples that stretch far further than you could ever imagine. Love matters because the love we have given others is the only thing left of us after we die. The only gift we leave behind in this world in the land of in-between. And when I go home from this land of exile, I want to leave it like Patty, having loved deeply, living a gift of love that ripples out and changes the world. Jesus loved deeply, and it changed people's lives. And each person that he touched with his love went out to love others and be Jesus to their people. Jesus loved deeply, changing the lives of the disciples, the lepers, the sinful women, the tax collectors, the sick, young children. He invested in their characters and their growth, inviting them to join God's story, to become the best versions of themselves, to become who they were made to be. And when we invest in others, when we love them deeply, we too invite them to join God's story, to become the best versions of themselves, to become who they were made to be. This love changes lives, and changed lives change others. Deep love ripples out into the world, transforming and renewing the world through the gift of love. This is the gift Jesus gave. This is the gift Patty gave. And this is a gift that we too can give to the world. Loving deeply in this in-between matters immensely for the life of the world. How do we do that? How do we love others? First, we need to connect to the source. This is what the Bible tells us about growing in love. 1 John 4 says, "Dear friends, let us continue to love one another, for love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God, but anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love." God is love. So if we want to love others well, if we want to give the gift of love, we have to be connected to him, the source of love. The love that we give away to others comes from God, and we can't love deeply the way that Jesus loves unless we're connected to him. Jesus tells us, "Yes, I am the vine and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing." This is one of the verses that I have really been wrestling with and trying to live out these past couple years, because I know that I cannot do this walk without being firmly connected to Jesus. So I've been practicing my remaining muscles. Some versions of the Bible translate this word remain as abide or to stay, but ultimately it's a being verb, not a doing verb. And simply being is hard for me. I don't know about you guys, because I'm so used to trying to do things for God instead of simply be with God. But I've been practicing the spiritual disciplines of silence and solitude and simply being with God. And I found that the more and more I abide in him, the more love I have to give away. because it's hard to love others with a love that you haven't experienced yet. And real love only comes from God. Humans will always disappoint you. They can try to love you, but we aren't perfect, and our love isn't perfect. But when you remain in Jesus, you experience his perfect love. And then that's the love that you can try and give away to others. John 15 says, I have loved you even as the Father has loved me. Remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. This is my commandment, love each other in the same way that I have loved you. Do you know Jesus' love for you? Have you experienced his love? Have you practiced simply remaining in his love, abiding in his deep, deep love for you? Because before you can love others the same way that he loves you, you have to experience his love for you. And the more time we spend remaining in God, abiding in him, and feeling his love for us, the more he will grow our ability to love. 1 John 4 says, and as we live in God, our love grows more perfect. Like I said, our attempts to love will not always be perfect. They can't be, because we're not God. But the Bible promises us that no matter how imperfect you feel at loving people right now, your love for others can grow the more you live in God. So if you're struggling with loving others right now, or you feel like that's something that's really hard for you, it's okay. Just know that devoting quality time to remaining in Jesus' love for you first will help you grow there. So first, we need to connect to the source. And second, you need to identify your others. Now that you have all of this love from God to give away, from being connected to him, who are you going to give it to? Identify your others, the people in your life that you can love. And I like to break it down into 3 categories to help me think through it, so that you're not defining your love too narrowly. So first, your wounded stranger. These are people, there are always strangers in our lives who are hurting, people who are aching and looking for love. Jesus met wounded strangers all the time. The man in the synagogue whose hand he healed, the Samaritan woman at the well, the man he cast a legion of demons out, the blind, the lame, the sick, the hurting, wounded strangers all around Jesus. Jesus didn't heal everyone, but the wounded strangers that he came into contact with, he loved them. So consider, who might be a wounded stranger in my life? Maybe it's the person sitting alone eating lunch at the Union. Maybe it's the girl crying in the bathroom of your dorm hall. Maybe it's the mom whose kid is having a meltdown in the grocery store an aisle over. Maybe it's the homeless guy when you're filling up gas. Make a conscious decision to show love to a wounded stranger you encounter this week and be Jesus' love to them. Also, identify your close neighbor. So this is people who are in your day-to-day life, those people in close proximity to you. For Jesus, these were his disciples, the people he spent every day with. For you, it might be your classmates, your coworkers, your lab partner, maybe your church brothers and sisters, your children, you gotta live with them, your roommates, maybe your literal neighbor if you know them. Choose 2 to 3 close neighbors, people that you are in regular day-to-day contact with, and intentionally show them love this week. And then last, think of your dear friend. For Jesus, this was his 3 closest disciples, Peter, James, and John. He spent special amounts of time investing in and loving them. So if you're married, this would be your spouse. If you're not married, this would be your closest 1 to 2 friends that you invest in and share life with. Choose one way to intentionally show love to your dear friend this week. So we've connected to the source, we've identified who are my others, and then last, we need to put love in action. Here's what 1 John tells us. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. We can say we love our roommates, our children, our spouses, our classmates, our coworkers, all we want. But until we show that love through our actions, our words are like the clanging of cymbals and gongs. Demonstrate your love through action. Make it tangible. So, maybe the close neighbor you chose is your roommate. Maybe you could decide to take the trash out for them each week, just because, no strings attached. Maybe your close neighbor was your son. You could choose to dedicate the first 10 minutes after you pick them up from school to listening undividedly to whatever they want to tell you. Maybe the wounded stranger you chose was someone sitting alone eating lunch. You can offer to eat lunch with them. Maybe they'll say no, but at least you offered. If your dear friend was your best friend, you could intentionally devote an hour on Wednesday nights to watching Parks and Rec, if they like Parks and Rec. If they don't do that. Ultimately, though, decide, how is my love tangible to my others? Is the truth of my love for them demonstrated in my actions? If I were called to court and asked to prove how I loved my wounded stranger, my close neighbor, and my dear friend, could I point to specific and tangible actions that demonstrated the truth of my love? So write down one action that you'll take for each of your others this week to show them love, and then do it. And this is how we begin to love deeply. Our lives are filled with now whats, but luckily we don't have to wait for love. As people following God, the way is clear. Love is available right here, right now. And we are actually commanded to participate in, experience, and give love right here, right now. Not someday, not someone, right now. And this is the way that Jesus lived. Jesus never had a Pinterest perfect wedding. He never found the one or his soulmate, but his life was marked by deep love. And we are called to live like him, with lives marked by deep love. This is the life in the in-between that Jesus demonstrated to us, loving deeply both God and others, a life marked and defined by deep, abiding love. And that's the way that we can live too. 1 John 4:17 says, "And as we live in God, our love grows more perfect. So we will not be afraid on the day of judgment, but we can face him with confidence because we live like Jesus here in this world." Let's live like Jesus here in this world. Now what? Now we love deeply. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for showing us first what a life marked by deep love looks like. God, it can be so hard to let go of cultural expectations of love, or what we've thought about love our whole lives, Lord, and to feel like we can't start loving people until that someday. But God, you show us a way that's so much bigger, the way that's about you, that's about bringing heaven to earth and transforming and remaking this world and people right here, right now, not someday. Please help us to be brave and to intentionally show love to others, just like you show it to us. Help us to connect to you and feel your love for us, Lord, so that we can give that love away to others. We love you so much. In Jesus' name.